So, hell, we get now here finally to the maybe actual good news, or maybe not unmitigated good news. Our third and final story on this New World next week. I'm not going to enforce that. Sheriffs disobey new anti-gun laws, refuses to disarm citizens. Dateline, Klickitat County, up in Washington State in the Pacific Northwest, in reaction to tragic shootings throughout 2018, Washington State passed and is planning to pass a slew of new anti-gun bills that will make them one of the most regulated states in the country. Take that, Calitopia. These bills are being met by resistance from an unlikely group. Handful of sheriffs standing up to the unconstitutional nature of the bills and their promising disobedience. Sheriff Bob Songer, one of the sheriffs, outspoken about his resistance during an interview with The Guardian. Published over the weekend, Songer told the paper that the anti-gun legislation passed last November is, quote, unconstitutional on several grounds. I've taken the position that as an elected official, I'm not going to enforce that law, end quote. Songer also cited ongoing litigation by the NRA and other lobbies, which aims to demonstrate the laws violate both the Second Amendment and the state's constitution. He also said that if other agencies attempted to seize weapons from county residents under the auspices of the new laws, he would consider preventively standing in their doorway, James. And we come right back to that situation where when you're faced with the cops who have a bunch of weapons, your feelings might go out the window, James.
Yeah. Well, I'm no U.S. constitutional scholar like your last president was, right? Obama was the constitutional scholar, supposedly. Anyway, I'm no scholar on this, but isn't this how the system is supposed to work, right? All these checks and balances, and one of them is that you have local sheriffs who can choose to not enforce unconstitutional laws, and that should be one of the final checks against unconstitutional grabs for power by the federal government. So it seems, or the state government even. So it seems like this is a good system.
And I believe you are. It pleases the crown. We are allowed to choose our sheriffs in an election. So that's another element. There's a check and balance on Bob Songer. If people don't like this, vote the bum out next time, right?
Exactly. So, I mean, look, as people know, I'm not in favor of democracy or whatever. I'm an anarchist. But at the very least, this is the way the system was set up with this idea in mind, that there may be a time when a government tries to go too far. And how do we prevent that? Well, you have a check. You can elect your sheriff, and the sheriff can choose to go along or not go along and declare something, find something to be unconstitutional and not enforce it. That is how the system is supposed to properly function. So I think this is a good story. We're going to see how this plays out. And of course, one of the factors in all of this is the public opinion, which then can be influenced against this sheriff. Who does he think he is, getting in the way of our gun grabbing laws? And if they get enough people rallied around and outraged through the MSM, oh my God, this guy's trying to uphold the Constitution. What an 18th century clown. Then he'll be voted out, and you'll get a sheriff that will gladly go along with the gun grabs. But I mean, so again, there's checks upon the checks upon the checks upon the checks, which again is kind of the system you do want. It's just that we do need to counteract the MSM voices, the establishment puppet voices that are going to come out against sheriffs like this one.
There's just a really lot of, interesting, maybe volatile things that are all going to kind of come together on the West Coast. I lived there for over a decade. California, Oregon, and Washington, they all have this weird battle of freedom and the most regulation everywhere. It's going to be really interesting to see what goes down. James, as I like to say at the end of these episodes, I stream news, music, memes, and more Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 Mountain Time at MediaMonarchy.com/listen. I would love for folks to come and check us out. James.
Now that I think about it, when those schools that are doing that social experiment with the money, when that goes cashless, then it's a psyop. When they start going, no, we're not going to print these paper dollars. Now you're going to have a card that you swipe. Yeah, I see where this will go in the future. And yeah, that's definitely bad. So we can agree that there are bad elements to this story. Anyway, that's another 3 interesting stories. Thank you for bringing them to our attention. And I hope everyone will go to MediaMonarchy.com for your daily podcasts and updates, and CorbettReport.com for everything else. Talk to you again next week.
Thanks so much, buddy. Take care. Our Our second story on this New World Next Week is kind of a cluster of stories, James. A couple of them I talked about explicitly this last week on my morning show that I found they kind of went together, even though they're in different fields, as it were. Taiwan school bank experiment, money lessons for life. So a really interesting thing. The school in Taiwan basically ran an experiment employing the school kids where they could get dollars that they could exchange for goods. They had a parent-teacher meeting. When the parents found out, they were a little angry. I will never agree to something that's illegal. At this school in Taiwan, the parent-teacher meeting takes a turn for the worst when a father finds out his kid has been part of a social experiment. Now, this is actually about a whole half-hour-long documentary from Witness, Al Jazeera. The entire thing is subtitled. There's not a bit of translation going on over the dialogue, so just pretty much leave it for folks to go check out. And again, that kind of power when you see a parent actually get involved and get pissed about what's been going on at the school. Speaking of other things going on that parents might not know about, Facebook ripped off game-playing kids and their parents in multi-year what Facebook calls friendly fraud. When parents found out about how much their children had spent, one 15-year-old racked up $6,500 in charges in 2 weeks of games on Fedbook. The company denied requests for refunds. In the show notes, you can find the documentation of the messages between Facebook employees going, "Oh, LOL, I wouldn't refund that." Facebook employees referred to these children as whales, a term borrowed from the casino industry to describe profligate spenders. A child could spend hundreds of dollars a day on in-game features, such as arming their character with a flaming sword or magic spells to defeat the enemy, even if they didn't realize it until the credit card bill arrived. So, James, I had both of those stories that I covered this week on the Morning Monarchy, and you followed up with, I think, kind of the hat trick here that'll wrap up this second segment. Facebook pays teens to install VPN that spies on them. Fedbook sidesteps the App Store and rewards teenagers and adults to download the Research app and give it root access to network traffic in what may be a violation of Apple policy, so the social network Fedbook can decrypt and analyze all that good phone activity, James.
There's a lot to be said about the Facebook stories, but I can imagine most of the audience will already understand what those stories are about. But that first story is interesting to me, the social experiment on the dollars system that they implemented at that school. I did watch the video. I hope people will go and do so. It is half an hour, but it is interesting. And I think you and I might have very different takes on this, because I'm wondering, what's so bad about this?
I honestly, initially, and again, just I've got three things going at once and show prep and all those things. It's tough. I can't just listen to it while I work on something else, so I probably missed some parts. I initially kind of thought the school had teamed up literally with a bank and were running an experiment.
No. Well, yeah, I hope people will watch the video if they want more information on this. That wasn't at all what was happening. Essentially, the school has the certain chores that the students do, the whatever, taking out the trash or whatever that the students contribute to already. And the incentive system that they live in the communist, public education system is from each according to his abilities, to each according to his needs. You have to do it because you have a responsibility, and they had points and stickers or whatever for if you did a good job. They came in and said, well, why don't we use this play money that we'll just print up? We'll print up some play money, and if you do a good job, you can earn some play money, and then you can use that play money in the school store. And so, yeah, as you say, in one dramatic moment, and I really have to wonder how many of the scenes in this documentary were staged. I know some of them were. For example, when they follow the guy into the principal's office for the first time, clearly a staged, recreated scene. That was not the first time this person ever met the principal. They did that for the cameras. So you have to wonder, the PTA meetings and stuff, was that real? Was that staged? Was that recreated? Were they hyping it up? Was this reality show editing, etc., etc. But anyway, one of the parents gets angry. He says, "You're doing a social experiment with our kids. This is illegal. I'm going to sue. I'm going to take legal action." And then, of course, they go out and say, well, no, actually, it's legal because of this, and we're not making them work for anything. It's not an employment contract. It's literally the same as a points or sticker system, except this time it's play money that then they get to exchange at the school store. Anyway, all of that being said, the implication is that the schools aren't already a social experiment, that there's any way to run these schools that isn't a social experiment. It's just that the social experiment they're currently, the normal system is just the communist social experiment where money doesn't exist and there's just vague, you have a duty and from each according to his abilities and blah, 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 all this vague nonsense, and then thrust them in at the deep end when they get out of school. And now you're in this world where you have to work and earn money and do all of this without any understanding of how that works. I actually wish there had been a system like they did at this school, at my school. It would have been a lot more interesting and a lot more educational when I was growing up. So I really hope people who are interested in this, in education and things like this, will take a look at this, because personally, I think this is actually a great story, and I wish more of the public indoctrination system enslavement camps would do something like this that might actually help prepare people for the real world. There's a million caveats and devils and details and all of that, but just as a vague, as a concept, I think this is actually a good idea.
So if your kid came home from school and said, "Dad, I made money today," you'd go, "Oh, yeah?
Play money? Sure, yeah." I mean, again, yes, actually, because I also, as a new parent, I really am thinking about how do I introduce the concept of money to my children, and how do I get them to understand value and working and providing services to others and making the community a better place. And part of that is shown through the medium of exchange that is money. So how do you introduce that concept and working and earning? I mean, there's a lot of very valuable educational opportunities there on what is essentially what would otherwise be hey, you got a gold sticker on this meaningless chart on the wall. I mean, it's a much more educational experience, I think, to be working in this way.
And there's really, there's nothing like that feeling of getting out from your main education at 18 and realizing you didn't learn a damn thing about how the world works. Gosh, I wish I knew how to balance a checkbook or change a tire on a car, and we all have kind of gone through that. Really interesting story and segment there, James. I appreciate that.